Hello and welcome to Oak Road Hatter, where I'm joined by Jamie Castle and Adam Driscoll. How are you doing, Jamie?
Yeah, not too bad. Much better than the week, that's for sure. I think we were all in pretty foul moods after the Leeds result. Obviously, another defeat, but not as bad as that Leeds game, albeit it was a low bar. But I'm back at my parents this weekend, hence the different setup. Had a lovely roast, so that's put me in that put me in a great mood. So yeah, looking forward to it.
And how are you doing, Adam?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Had a nice weekend putting up the Christmas decorations and getting into the sort of festive spirit. Obviously, a little bit offset by football again, but generally, yeah, doing pretty well.
I mean, Luton aren't exactly making you feel festive. I thought
No,
that's how everyone, but they're so generous at this time of year.
they certainly are defensively. Yeah, yeah. Keep giving out early Christmas presents, don't we, to a lot of strikers? So we'll come into all of that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Norwich City 4, Luton Town 2. But before that, don't forget to check out our new merch range on oakroadhatter.com. We've got legends, posters, and mugs. We've got embroidered t-shirts and jumpers and sweatshirts. And we've got some other new fun designs for you to check out and get just in time for Christmas to maybe give you something positive to think about when it comes to Luton. But yeah, as I said, we're going to get straight into it. Jamie, Norwich City 4, Luton Town 2. On from the outside, compared to our predictions when we did the preview pod, doesn't seem like that bad a result. We scored twice, but it's not what it seems, is it? It's four
Yeah.
goals that we really shouldn't be conceding most of them.
Yeah, no, as you say, I think I mean myself and Adam was 3-1, you were 2-0, so obviously we all three of us predicted a defeat by 2 goals. So um I think yeah, almost summed up our season in a way. How I think during large parts of the season, I think Leeds was particularly awful, but during large parts of the season we've been okay for decent chunks of games. I wouldn't say necessarily we've been dominated for large spells of games, but it's just in specific moments where you just sort of lose your head, make a mistake, don't run back hard enough, or whatever. Is I think it's those moments where we're really struggling, and there was 4 of those moments again at the weekend. Definitely think in terms of overall play, we were 10 times better than Leeds, but as I said, obviously that bar was pretty low, but I think still there was enough in the performance to take some positives from. So that therefore, I think this pod for me is going to be a bit more positive than the Leeds one, just because of that. But yeah, I mean, 4 monumental mistakes, and I think Rob finally, I know we'll come on to a bit more detail later on, but finally put some players under the bus. It could be seen as a bit of an eventual slippery slope towards a sacking, which I mean probably at this point is almost going to come at some point. It's a case of I think when, not if, at this point. But I think it's about time that some players start to get their acts together, because yeah, all 4 of those goals were just pretty ridiculous. We'll talk through each of them in detail, but I think it's more frustration at the actions rather than the actual performance for me.
Yeah, it's obviously Rob's post-match comments are not something we've seen from him ever in terms of not backing the players on this one. He had a lot to say about the lack of effort, maybe the lack of concentration from others, or plenty of different things, and we'll be talking about them later on. Adam, Norwich City are an interesting team. We said in a preview podcast that their league position probably doesn't match some of their results and some of their form, and they show just how dangerous they can be when given easy opportunities to score, which we gave them plenty of.
Yeah, we did, but I don't think it's like unique to Norwich, is it? Like we give everyone every week opportunities to score. It's just whether they have a little bit of quality to be able to take it. Now, clearly, teams at the top end of the league, Leeds and I know they're not maybe up there right now, but Norwich probably will be. They have individual players with quality just to punish you straight away. Even if it's a split second mistake, that generally speaking, those sort of teams will punish you. I think even if we look back to the games that we have won, you know, we spoke a couple of weeks ago about the whole game, and they've missed a couple of very, very good chances. So ultimately, it comes down to how good are they at putting those chances away, because we are gifting them each week. But yeah, I mean, on Norwich, we talked about the threats, the clear threats that were there. Borja Sainz as a winger, only scored one goal, but it was the goal that killed us off, really. So yeah, it's. I think Jamie's right. It's not necessarily a bad performance in terms of effort. I don't think, from what I saw of the game, but it just comes down to those moments of like stupidity and lack of concentration, really. So yeah, we'll come on to like Edwards and what he said, but I can't really say I disagree with him on this occasion.
Yeah, well, obviously we lost 4-2, but we did go 1-0 up, which was only brief, but it gave us something to celebrate, Jamie. And what was the reaction in terms of the fans at the game like when we took that lead?
Yeah, I think overall there was a bit of relief because I think we did start fairly well. I think that the goal was a bit of a sort of Luton of old, really, where Clark was pressing high, wins the ball. Well, he didn't win it, but it sort of he nicks it, goes to Eli, beats the centre half and the keeper, rounds him and scores. So it's a goal that we haven't seen enough of and had been used to previously. So it was really nice to get that. I think the fans in the away ends were generally pleased for the first 20 or so minutes. I think I think that there was some frustration in terms of the way they were passing through us. I think it was a bit easy at times, but I think that's what you get with a two-man midfield. It is easy to pass through, but regardless of that, they hadn't really had too many clear openings, and I think the goal for us was sort of the first of the sort of clearer, bigger chances in the game, which was nice to have finally taken the chance, because I think it's not been the best of season so far for Eli, but that was what we sort of come accustomed to with Eli in previous seasons. So it was nice to see, and I hope he can kick on from that. I thought Clark overall yesterday was pretty good. I think it was one of his better performances for us. So yeah, I think it's some positives after the first goal. Just a shame that it only lasted 5 minutes. I think if we were to hold on for a bit longer, then it could have been a different game. But I think sort of just to let them get back on at 1-1 5 minutes after we scored was it's pretty frustrating because of the goal and the way it came.
Yeah, and they did equalise after 5 minutes after we went ahead through Ante Cernak, which I hope I got the pronunciation right. If I didn't, don't criticise me if any Norwich City fans are listening to this. Yeah, he's not been particularly prolific this season. We've just seen before we started recording. He had 2 goals before we came to Norwich, and one of those was against Plymouth. And he's now doubled his goal tally in the space of one game, and also got an assist. How many? I mean, that first goal we conceded, Jamie. What led to that really, and what was the real issues causing that?
I mean, we'll talk for each goal in turn, but I think one of the overriding feelings for me is just a lack of leadership at the back. I mean, we talk about the impact that Locks had on the pitch. I think ever since we've lost him, we haven't really replaced his leadership and sort of him being able to organise that back three. I think McGuinness is obviously new, and I think he's in terms of his individual performances wise, I think he's showing massive signs for improvement and seeing the sort of centre half that he can be, but he's still new. He's not exactly going to sort of lead the team when he's the newest of the back three. We're sort of reliant on sort of Mengi and Barrow at the back, and even the keeper to sort of command that back three, back five, or it was back four for large parts. So I think it's just a general lack of leadership and communication. I think in terms of the goal, there was a ball over the top that Mengi heads, and to be honest, he could have just left it because there was no one behind him. It was Hashi behind him. I think Borja Sainz was out wide left, but he was way too far from the ball to even get it. So all it is a shout from Kaminsky or Hashi to say leave it, and it goes out for a goal kick. I think that fundamentally is number one in terms of that leadership. Then, but anyway, Mengi heads it, goes up into the air. Kaminsky we've said before, I think shot stopping wise is world class. He's definitely Premier League level in terms of shot stopping, but everything else, including his sort of command of his area, I think he can be a bit shaky at times, and he comes out to punch the ball, gets a decent punch in it. But for me, I could question whether he needed to actually come out in the first place, because you had, I think, McGuinness and Bell fairly close by, and the ball was so high in the air that it would have taken a pretty like world class touch from one of their players to bring it down and shoot straight away. So just let your defenders deal with it rather than come out and cause even more uncertainty in the box. And then on the back of the punch, Clarkson sort of runs back and then sort of heads it down when you think just boot it, just boot it out for corner. Like, don't put your head down at hip level to try and get onto it and control it and clear it away. Just first chance, just get rid of it. But then he heads it back. Then the Norwich player gets it, and then sort of Bell and Baptiste to Jocelyn with Cernach, and Cernach manages to get a shot away. So there's 3 or 4 little individual things there in that goal that you just think that a leader at the back would have, first of all, shouted to Mengi, leave. Second of all, Kaminsky probably shouldn't have come out, and the leader either tells him don't come out, or you're already organised between yourselves and you tell Kaminsky unless you absolutely have to, don't come out. And then just for the moments from there, there's just no one that just takes the ball and just gets rid of it. There's just like, don't be afraid to just boot it. So lots of little individual errors in the goal where you can't really pinpoint it on one person, but I think that summarises us as a defence this season, where it's just little actions where either someone's overplaying or just thinks that they're trying to be clever to maybe cause a transition and get the ball and counter attack. But when I think fundamentally, rule number 1 is just get rid. If in doubt, boot it out. I think is probably the saying that we need to write on our whiteboard at the brace right now. Because fundamentally, there's no way we're going to be winning games if we're conceding 4s and 3s and 5s. Which, I mean, obviously the whole game was 1-0, but you're now talking of the last 3 away games, we've conceded 12 goals, and there's no way we're going to get anything on the road if we keep up that level of sort of goals conceded.
Just on the first goal as well, I watched the goals back again, like this evening, and if you pause the video when the ball goes in, we've got 8 players in the box, including Kaminsky, and they've got 4, but one of the guys is so far out of picture in the left-hand side that he's barely involved in the play. So you look at that, and it's basically 8 or 7 outfield players for us versus 3 of theirs, and yet somehow all of those elements we've just run through, like the Mengi header without the communication, the 2 or 3 second balls there as well, we just can't deal with it. And it's just insane, isn't it? Like 7 versus 3, and the ball ends up in the back of our net. And it's no wonder that we've conceded 33 goals already. And when you think about our promotion winning season, we conceded 39 in the 46 league games. So it really just kind of tells you everything you need to know, that kind of pattern of play for that goal.
Yeah, we really are. I mean, open would be an understatement in terms of the number of goals we're conceding, but how easy we're making it for teams to score goals, Jamie. That openness was on show for. I mean, it was on show for a lot of Norwich's goals, but the second and third in particular really showed that we aren't a unit at the back.
I mean, the second goal is nothing to do with tactics or being open at the back. It's just stupid. It's absolutely stupid. Like a long ball over the top. Chong is trying to usher it out and thinks he's got there. But I mean, at the time in the ground, I thought, he's got this all day long. He's ushering us out. It's a goal kick. But watching it back, he's still like 5 yards from the ball. The way the away end is, you're the other side, so you think he's sort of like literally right on top of the ball trying to usher it out. But he's still way too far from the ball to have any sort of control on defending it from Jack Stacey. So he easy as Larry just manages to get round him, nicks it away. Simple ball in the box to Cernach, who by the way is open, and then it's basically a tap in for him. So I think fundamentally, I think Chong does all that work to be fair to him, I mean, it was left wing back, but stroke left mid in a 4-4-2. I think we were more of a 4-4-2 yesterday. So he does all that work to get back and get ahead of the Stacey, and he's probably a good 10, 15 yards ahead of him at one point in that sort of moment. And he almost just loses his sense of positioning. Whereas if he just gets 2 or 3 yards closer to the ball, he's able to sort of put his boots in the ground, and then if Stacey comes in, he can sort of has a bit more strength, because Stacey's not, obviously we know Stacey pretty well. He's fantastic technically, and he's athletic in terms of sort of pace and getting forwards, but he's not the strongest lad. I think that there's a few moments when he was playing for Luton that he was pretty outmuscled fairly easily. So it says a lot about Chong if Stacey's able just to get round him really easily and then pass it to Cernach. So yeah, that is obviously the absolute number one error that leads to that goal. So I think, yeah, you can definitely point the blame at Chong for that. But then having said that, Mengi and McGuinness are in the box, and you've got 2 Norwich centre forwards in the box. And Mengi and McGuinness are both watching the ball, assuming Chong's gonna see it out. And then by the time Stacey gets there, it's too late because they're ball watching, and then Cernach and I don't know who the other player in the box was, but they've got two Norwich forwards in the box in space. All Stacey's got to do is find a 10-yard pass to Cernach, and it gets in, and it's a goal. So whereas if Mengi and McGuinness still was actually switched on to the danger just in case, go really tight to Cernach, then that stops it as well. So I think that large parts of blame on Chong, but still Mengi and McGuinness can do a lot more just off the ball and just to refocus and make sure that, worst case scenario, if the danger does come, they're there and ready to try and get a block or get the ball away.
I saw some comments around like, you can't blame Chong because he's playing out of position, blah blah blah. But any footballer knows how to do or should know how to do the basics of defending, right? Which is you either shepherd it out for a goal kick, or you smack it so far into the stand that it's in Norwich city centre. Like, it should never be an option, or the outcome of that should never be that the attackers tap the ball inside you, and then 5 seconds later it's in the back of the net. So I don't buy the excuses of, well, this guy's playing out of position or he's not a defensive minded player. It's so basic, and to me just clearly shows that either they're not listening to the instructions that are coming from management, or they don't really care. Like, again, it comes back to we used the word accountability a lot in the week, didn't we? And like, are they just not listening to instructions? What, like, I don't understand what could be going through your mindset there in terms of just not dealing with that situation and rolling your sleeves up. And even if you can see the corner, like, at least you can then get people back and you can recover and you can deal with that next phase of play. So yeah, I don't buy the Chong out of position thing. It's just basic defending in my eyes.
And they say the hope is the hope that kills you. And I mean, we had hope in the game because Jacob Brown got an equaliser, and he is one player who you can't criticise the effort week in, week out, whether he's starting or coming off the bench. I think he's someone that puts in everything. And that's what Stoke fans said about him as well when we brought him in. They said he'll work his socks off you, but he might not have that little bit of quality that you're looking for. But the equaliser, Jamie, did you think maybe we would hold on to that?
Yeah, I did, because as I said, I thought in large parts of the game we were playing pretty well, and I was like don't get me wrong, like we went in 2-1 down, but we were all saying that we were fairly happy with the performance in the first half, and it's just 2 ridiculous moments in that first half in particular that saw us 2-1 down. So I was definitely still positive and confident that we could get something. The game was definitely there for the taking. So to come out pretty quickly, obviously you made the change, Moses, for Chong, which I think was the right call to make. Especially in that 4-4-2, Moses sort of getting forward a lot better. I think just before we go on to the Luton goal and the third and fourth, something I saw way too often in the first half with Chong was that I don't know who he was trying to press, because he was playing left mid in a 4-4-2 for large parts of the game, and then they were like a 4-3-3. So you've got Chong was there mainly to try and mark Jack Stacey, but at large parts he was like 10, 15 yards back. So when Eli was trying to put some pressure on Dorlan and or Duffy, that they would look right and Stacey was in like acres of space. We just think if Chong pushed up that 10 yards higher to be on Stacey, just let him go. You've got Amari Bell, who's a pretty good defender one-on-one. Just let Bell can handle a right winger. If Chong pushes up on Stacey, then you know that Duffy and Doyle can't go to the right because Chong's man on man with Stacey, and then that gives Eli and Morris more incentive and more ability to really go harder on Duffy and Doyle because you know that they're only going to go left to left back. So I just think Chong was caught so like way too often in the middle of nowhere off the ball in the press. He was probably 10 yards like away from any Norwich player, which I think in a system where everyone's just clearly trying to play a higher press system, you need to be man to man in those situations. So I just think Chong's all round game was pretty poor. I think he was one of our worst players, and yeah, it was quite right that Moses came on for him in the second half, and I think he was a lot better at trying to press Stacey, and I think Stacey did find it hard for large parts of the second half until I think Bell got a bit tired and he managed to get in behind. So yeah, I think that change Moses for Chong was really good, and when Brown managed to sort of convert the set piece, which again I think as a positive, we're seeming to be able to score more from set pieces now, which is really good. We did say that the deliveries weren't actually that bad, and they're just trying to be very precise with where they put them. And actually, from a set piece perspective, we were pretty good at converting the set piece into a shot on goal. So it's nice to now finally be seeing us score more goals from set pieces. Obviously, McGuinness 2 weekends ago, or last weekend now against Hull, and then you got Brown yesterday. So yeah, I think that's one big positive. But then, as you say, to then go from 2-2 to 4-2 was really frustrating, and you throw the game down the pan. You're 2-2, 10 minutes to go, and if anything, you're looking like we could try and nick something and win 3-2, but it wasn't to be.
It's interesting what you say on Chong there, Jamie, because, and I don't know if you disagree with me here, Adam. For me, he's been nowhere near good enough this season in terms of. I mean, a lot of the players haven't been. We can certainly say that. Look at our league position, but Chong has so much potential, and he's such an exciting player. But I just don't think we've seen that much, if not at all, this season, Adam.
Yeah, I don't think we have we? I think he's been tried in a number of different positions. I mean, I think back to the Preston away game. It's one thing that stands out in my mind. He absolutely slaughtered them first half, and we went in 1-0 down at half time. But he was playing left of that front three, and he was just turning them inside out. Like he had the flair, the ball was glued to his foot. He must have been hacked down 6-7 times. So clearly, I think I personally think that left wide forward is probably his best position. Um, and that previously we've seen the link up with him and Doughty down that left hand side. But yeah, I mean, when he's not in that position, I don't really know what he offers us. I think you can argue. Like, I know there's was he playing left wing back at the weekend? Was he playing left mid? But being that a little bit deeper is just not him. Like he's an attacker. He's not a midfielder. Um, he's been tried in the hole a few times with like Morris and Adebayo in front of him. I think he does well sometimes in there. He can pick up the ball, but then again, you're looking at what's in front of you movement wise. Adebayo and Morris aren't the sharpest on the shoulder and things like that. So I think if we had a striker, for the want of arguing, someone like a Tom Cannon or even a Joe Taylor, dare I say, that is moving off the shoulder of a defender, I could see Chong thriving. But I think at the moment, for me, the only real place to play him is that wide left of the front three, and clearly we've gone away from what we were doing with that earlier in the season, really. So it's a shame. I question mentality a little bit of Chong. I don't want to be overly harsh, but I feel like he just strikes me as someone that will just throw his toys out the pram quite easily, and we have no space or time for that mentality and that attitude. And Finn, you mentioned it actually in one of our chats earlier, and it has something that came into my mind at the weekend. But we spoke about players throwing their arms in the air and coming from clubs, so-called, well, yeah, big clubs like Man United, where they have this we're gonna outlast the manager mentality, and throw people under the bus. I do wonder whether there's an element of this within the club at the moment with certain players as well. Are they a waiting for Edwards to get sacked before they pull their finger out, or are they B waiting for the January transfer window to open so they can try and get a move? And I feel like Chong falls into that bracket. I don't know what you guys think on that. I might be being overly harsh, but that's just how it comes across to me.
Yeah, I can certainly get on board with that in terms of he's a former big Premier League academy player, and it's probably something that it won't be taught at a club because it'd be ridiculous. You wouldn't teach that to young players, but when that's what's happening around you all the time, and it's particularly the time he came through at Man United,
Mm.
it was a real basket case, and it wouldn't be surprising if that is like very slightly in the back of his mind, because he has got all the ability in the world on that pitch. Well, not in the world maybe, but in the Championship, he can do some really, really brilliant things. I mean, look at when he played against us for Birmingham.
Yeah.
Have we seen that Chong at any point? I certainly don't think we have, and I think he has got all this potential that he's just not reaching. And it is really frustrating because you can see there are those moments that he could do something absolutely brilliant, but then next minute he stops concentrating or he'll misplace a pass or
Yeah.
it's very frustrating, Jamie.
Yeah, no, I think you should say I wouldn't be surprised if a large part of why we signed him was because he ripped us a new one at home against Birmingham. That would definitely have been on their minds that day, no doubt. That was like, well, this kid, we got to scout a bit more. And yeah, he was not really quite seen that. I think I do like Chong's ability. I think you saw it specifically in the Premier League where he managed to get us up the pitch like a lot more than a lot of other players. And I think had we not had him, we'd have been camped in the box a lot more at that level last year. He just allowed us to sort of on the counter win the ball, get a foul maybe, and he still does that. But I just don't know. In terms of the ability, he just hasn't hit the levels that we know. He's either got a heavy touch or I think against Leeds, he came on in the second half and looked really bright running forward and then left the ball behind him. It's just like, it's those moments where you just think you're better than that. Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you leaving the ball 5 yards behind you? Just bring it and beat him around. And then there was times in the first half yesterday where he'd try and get around someone, but then it was a great tackle. And I think he just shows too much of the ball sometimes to defenders. And if you're any sort of decent defender, you know exactly how to defend against someone like that. So yeah, it's frustrating. I think someone that maybe will go and we won't ever see his full potential. But I know he definitely has that, and I think he might go elsewhere at some point and show it again, which again is really frustrating. And another player that we may take a loss on. So yeah, he's a player that we all at the start of the season looked at and thought if we're going to go up, he's going to play a massive part. So probably no coincidence that he's not really doing well, and neither are we.
I do also wonder whether or not he's a victim of our lack of like defensive structure. Because even last season, right, we conceded a load of goals clearly, but I still felt like for the majority we had structure. Like we just got undone by bits of quality and the occasional lapse in concentration. I think back post Kabore is, for example, a couple of times, but I always felt like we had a pretty good structure across the back four and with that midfield too. And he was able then, with that structure behind him, to be a bit more of a carrier. Like, for example, you look at the Liverpool game at home when he pulls us out, and then he's busting a gut to be the one that's on the end of that square ball. Ironically from Kabore, I think. But I do also feel like our lack of structure there behind him is also a hindrance, and until we can address that, I don't know that you can play him. So I I'm not saying I would like. I think he should go or be sold or anything like that. But I think until you have that structure and you can address what I personally believe are mentality or kind of maybe even attitude type problems with him, I just you can't play him. As soon as you can address that structure and you can make him that driving player, then you bring him in, and he's probably one of the best in the league at that. So yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22 with Chong at the moment.
Yeah, you talk about defensive structure there, and defensive structure was not on show for the third goal. But we'll talk about that after a quick break. Welcome back to Oak Road Hatter, where I'm still joined by Jamie and Adam. And before we get into anything else, don't forget to check us out on social media. That's at Oak Road Hatter on Twitter or X, on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Facebook. And we have plenty of content going out on our social media, including links to our new merch collection, as we've previously mentioned. And if you look at Adam, he's also kindly modelling one of our first collections, one of our pieces from our first collection as well. So thank you very much for that, Adam. But yeah, we are going to talk about that third goal where, and we just spoke about it off air. Why has Shane Duffy allowed that high up the pitch? And how has Shane Duffy pulled off a no-look pass, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean he's obviously one of the best centre halves in the world, isn't he? To be able to do that and drive at the pitch and find Marcondes in that little half space. But yeah, again, I just think lack of leaders, I think there was a lack of effort for that goal. I think generally there wasn't a lack of effort throughout the game, but I think Eli, to be fair, okay, yeah, he was probably really tired in terms of all the pressing that he was doing, but you just let the man that you're meant to press get beyond you and then get into our third. As first of all, he just isn't good enough. But then even if Eli doesn't run back, then surely as a midfielder you've got to step up and try and at least block any sort of pass. So just to allow a centre back who by no means is known to be the most technically gifted centre back, to, as you say, to do a no look pass into Marcondes is frustrating first of all. But I think for me the big issue there is McGuinness. He pushes high to try and win the ball from Marcondes. He commits, but then gets beaten. And I think in that moment, that was like I was like, okay, that's now a goal. Like it was that moment where I just knew they were scoring. So frustrating. 10 minutes to go. Whether you sort of on the pitch, you have the mindset to let's just try and not concede, and at worst case take a point. So McGuinness probably could have changed his mindset in the game to not be as aggressive, because if he's beaten then they've got an overload in the box. So that I think for me is number one. It wasn't Marcondes, it was Cernach, wasn't it? But yeah, regardless, then Cernach gets round McGuinness, and then there's three players in no man's land in the box, and just allows Marcondes to have a tap in. I think all three of our centre backs or defenders were in the 6-yard box. I think they were just like entrenched in the box. I think they were for the fourth as well. So there's just no aggression to pick up a man. So to allow Marcondes that amount of time in the box to just find that space and shoot beyond Kaminsky is really frustrating. I think the third and fourth goal were pretty much carbon copies of one another, but it came from the source was from different areas. So again, lack of leadership, lack of communication, slight lack of effort at parts, but generally frustrating. And I think Edwards has every right to be angry and pointing the fingers at some of the players for throwing it away, because he tactically gets us to 80 minutes at 2-2. I do think there was some questionable subs. Again, don't want to point the finger at Cordy Woodrow, because I think he's trying. There's no issues with him as a player individually, but to bring him on for Jacob Brown, I think that's such a downgrade, especially in terms of the area of the pitch that he's playing in. Brown playing right mid of a 4-4-2, then you put Woodrow there, and he's just not that sort of player. You need Woodrow centrally, because if he's going to get you a goal, he's going to get you a goal in and around the 18-yard box. He's going to work his nuts off to try and press a defender as well. So the fact that you're trying to play him at right mid to get him behind Fisher is I think that was pretty questionable. And if no one else can play there, then you have to just change system. You have to maybe stick another centre mid in there. I mean, personally, I would have put Clark out right mid. He was a right winger previously in his previous life, so you know that he can play there. So I would have done Kraus for Brown and stuck Clark out wide. I think Clark has the ability to be able to beat a man on the right and delivers a fairly good ball at times. So I think that's the change that I would have made. So I think that lost us a lot of impetus in the game and a lot of control. I think previously we were having a lot of control down that right side, and we just lost it completely. And then it was Morris and Baptiste for Taylor and Kraus. I think generally they're okay substitutions, but I think that Woodrow one in particular just loses all sort of control for us on that right hand side.
You mentioned we've obviously spoken about Woodrow a lot, but you can't really. It's not a pile on him, because he is being brought on with at really awkward times in games, and he's being brought in weird positions as well, where he only ever seems to come on when we're chasing a game, which in fairness is pretty much every game at this point. And he's been asked to play. Well, he's had to play in midfield. He's had to play out wide. He's basically had to play everywhere except up front, apart from at Middlesbrough away. And obviously, Middlesbrough was a write-off. But he does come under a lot of criticism. But I think it's the areas of the pitch. But he's been asked to play in, and the times he's coming on to get into games.
Yeah, absolutely. And you say Borough was a write-off, but he started, and for the first half hour we were pretty good. So when he was in his normal position, he wasn't someone that we were looking at thinking, oh, he's rubbish, because we started that game and looked decent. So as you say, I think he's just been asked different things of him that he just isn't suitable for. As you say, he played in midfield that one time at home. I can't remember who it was against. Tried his best, didn't do anything awful. He was just doing the basics well. And I think that's what he's good at, doing the basics well. But he just isn't a centre mid A in that game, and B a right mid in the game yesterday. I think he got a couple of decent deliveries in because he's trying, but fundamentally he's a centre forward, and he should be getting the ball in and around the 18-yard area rather than being shoved out in wide areas. So I think that for me was the change that just lost it for us.
And we've seen mistakes cost us all season, and that was very much the case yesterday as well. People not concentrating. Essentially, all the things you're told at basic levels of any sport to try and avoid. And Edwards has clearly had enough, because we've obviously briefly mentioned his comments after the game, but let's discuss them in a bit more detail, because we've never seen him go against or turn on the players in the media since he's been at the club. He's always been incredibly protective of the players, but for the first time, he's really pushing them to the front of attention and going, it's their mistakes. They need to sort this out. And who do you think he's talking about in particular, Adam?
What, in terms of the last chance type comments?
Yeah, in terms of those last chance comments yesterday.
Well, I think the general consensus from what I've seen is the likes of Chong and Mengi. I think there's quite a few more you could probably throw into that bracket as well. I mean, we've all been critical of Edwards, and ultimately he is the one that leads us, right? But I think he's right in terms of not taking the blame for this, because it is basic mistakes that we've made, as we've spoken about. We've alluded to this already so far today. But that said, I can't think of many examples where you see a manager come out with these comments and it has a positive impact in the sense of fixing, the mistakes and the manager staying at that club for too much longer. I think if you've got players there that are weak in terms of mentality, poor attitude, I don't see those comments giving them a wake up call, personally. So yeah, I don't know. I like the change of tact, but I really don't know the impact that it's going to have. And I think it's not like we've got loads of quality and options on the bench that are going to just come in for these players that he's saying are on their last chance, that can just step in and step into that and replace them. That's just not, it's not how I see it. So yeah, I don't really know what's going to happen from now on. He's clearly had enough of, being the one to step forward and take the blame and do that. But we are still losing games either through a lack of effort or through a lack of quality and organisation. So a lot of it still falls back on Edwards, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I said elsewhere as well. It's too much of an oversimplification to say that it's Edwards' fault for where we are this season. I think
Yeah.
absolutely he needs to do better, and he's made mistakes this season, and I think the majority now are probably on the side of making a change, and I think that is I think probably about right, but he's not being helped by the board. Don't want to get into it, but clearly the recruitment side of things has been subpar for probably 3 out of the 4 windows for his tenure. I think obviously the January window when he came in was really good because we got Nakamba, and I think that signing was the signing that saw us go up. But other than that, I think the Premier League summer was, on the face of it at the time, okay, but I think looking at the players that we've signed since then, Giles is gone now, Benet's gone now. Obviously, we've lost both Sambi and Barkley, so there's no long-termism in those signings. Lost Kabore. So, in hindsight, the signings that we made in that Premier League window clearly haven't worked out for the better. And then, yeah, the January we didn't do anything, and then now the summer was we all could agree was undebatably really poor. So that as another issue is part to blame for why we are where we are. And then the third part that we should blame is the players. The players have not been good enough. You've got a mix of players there that have seen it, done that. Morris, like Clark. You've got McGuinness, who's had some decent time at the Championship. Bell has risen from the Conference to the Prem and now back in the Championship. So you've got players there that are that are used to seeing these sort of situations, and you've got players of that are high ability, Mengi, Chong. Like, you've got players through the squad that should be doing better, that shouldn't be 19th in the Championship. So absolutely, Edwards is within his right, and I think is accurate to come out and said what you said in the press yesterday. But now I'd put it on him to be like, go on then, change it. If you really believe that there's players in that team that aren't playing to your instructions, to your standards, drop them. No one in this team now, except probably Kaminsky, because there's no one behind him that, like, Shea or Crawl, there's no one you can change him for. And then B, Alfie Doughty when he's back. Apart from those 2 players, for me, no one is undroppable. You can argue Morris because he's captain and penalty taker, but you've got Eli and Brown and Taylor, and by all means, we said Paulie Woodrow when he played against Borough was all right when he was playing in his normal position. No one in that team now is undroppable. So fine, Rob. Like, we on this pod agree with you with what you've said, and I think from reading social media, I think large parts of the fan base agree with you in terms of the players. Now it's on you to drop them. If you believe that Chong and Mengi in particular, and I think Adam was right, they're the 2 players that I would pick out. I think Mengi was awful yesterday. Drop him. I don't care if you think he's your sort of diamond centre back that was really good in the Prem last year, and you probably could have got 20 million from him in the summer. Doesn't matter. Drop him. Tom Holmes has shown more than enough this season to sort of be worthy of a start. Obviously, I know Reece Burke's injured at the minute, but Reece Burke should come in. You've got players in that squad that can now come in. Like, you've got pretty much really fit squad. So you now have to drop these players. So there's now less excuse. Now we all know that you've realised that there's some players that are playing subpar. Now you have to act and drop those players, because if you don't, then I'm sorry, Rob, your time's going to be up pretty quickly, because you've got 2 home games coming up now, where if you get anything less than probably 3 points, I mean, ideally 4 points, right? And we all want 6 points, but if you don't win either of those games, then for me, your time is up.
it will be really interesting to see what team starts when when that team is announced on Saturday. If he has made those big calls, and who maybe not even isn't even in the matchday squad as well, because we've got a fair few players that aren't in the matchday squad at the moment because we've got enough players available for what seems like the first time in months. And I'm sure that will come back to bite me because it does every single time I say that we've got players available. But there are players like Nelson who aren't even getting in the squad now because there is availability. But he's someone who you certainly can't fault the effort when he does play because he's a hungry young player, which I know is a cliche, but it's true in his case. So it'll be interesting to see who is in that squad when it comes to Saturday's game.
Yeah, as you say, like we've got those youth players. If Doughty's out and you think Chong's making mistakes, just give Joe Johnson a go at left wing back. Like he's clearly highly thought of. He's in the England setup. Give him a go. Like if you really think that there's players that need drop in, then you've got no excuse but to play those players. Those two players in particular, Nelson and Johnson, that apart from the first game of the season or early on, they've been nowhere near the squad, which I think is interesting. So yeah, I think you have to now act and yeah, I think make some changes.
Adam, do you think there will be big changes for Saturday's game?
Not really, if I'm being brutally honest. Because I can see it. Like I can see the script. It's a case of, well, someone will question him. Why didn't you make the changes? And it will be, well, we had a really good week in training. I saw a response. Well, I'm not. We spoke last week about what our training's like because we're playing against each other. But I don't. I genuinely don't think there will be, and because I don't think there is that quality and depth. Right. We've spoken about the trust in Taylor. We've spoken about the quality of the likes of Woodrow. I'd be very surprised if there are changes to the squad. I know we make like 4 changes per game at the moment, but I can see it reverting back to maybe what played against Leeds or something. But that's still the same, primarily the same squad. So yeah, I can't really see how he can make too much change, and I think that will be rolled out as, yeah, I saw the response I needed, regardless of what the score is on Saturday. I think that will be the answer if it gets questioned.
Jamie, you mentioned that obviously these 2 home games coming up. You said you'd probably expect a minimum of 3 points from that. When you look at the teams we're playing against, though, with it being what Stoke and Swansea, the next 2 at home, are they not 2 games that we should be winning both of them? And if we don't win both of them, is that maybe Edward's time up?
No, I think it's hard to say that you need to win both or you're gone. I think that is, as an expectation, is I think pretty outrageous. But we, as you say, we absolutely should be getting at least one win. We need to be winning one of those 2, and for me, probably draw the other. So for me, 4 points is my expectation. If you don't get 4 points, then that's not good enough. Because you can roll out the sort of the usual thing. Oh, every game's a tough game. They've all got good players. Well, they're only tough games right now because we're bad. Like if you're a Sheffield United or a Burnley, which we are absolutely in the same ballpark as those 2 teams because we have come down with those 2 teams, and have the Premier League money and should have the squad. Like they're 2 games that ultimately, if Sheffield United and Burnley were at home to Swansea and Stoke, you put them in your acca to win. So yes, every game's a tough game, but for a team of the ambition and expectation that a parachute like Premier League team like has, they should be 6 points for sure. But you obviously have to have an allowance, and 4 points is fine, it's acceptable. But yeah, I think 3 or less. I think if you lose one of those games, then it's really tough because as bad as our away form's been, you can't rely on winning every single home game because if you do, then that could be a very slippery slope. And fine, if you win all your homes, then you could say we've got what 12 or so homes left. That's 36 points, and then you're probably safe and you survive. But yeah, I think it's very over reliant to say that you need to win both those home games.
Yeah, I do tend to agree there in terms of like someone offers me 4 points now, I'd snap your hand off in those games. And I think December, like we're obviously like recording today, 1st of December, but December is going to be so big for the club as a month because ultimately there's, in my opinion, there's this month where the board have to kind of understand what direction we're going in, right? So they really have to work out come January or towards the end of this month, where are we going to put our finances? You're either going to put it in getting rid of Edwards and the compensation and whatever that fee looks like. We're not privy to that. So you're either putting your money there and making that change, or you're putting your money behind Edwards in the January transfer window and you're backing him to the hill. You're getting rid of 4 or 5 players. You're bringing 4 or 5 players in, but the underlying thing there for the board is that you are going to have to spend some money at some point towards the end of this month and into next month. If you don't, we will get relegated. Like we are, there's bigger clubs that have gone and done this as well, come down from the Prem and ended up back in League One within 1 or 2 seasons. There's nothing that excludes us from falling into that category. So I'm going to be very eagerly watching December, and I think if they want any sort of leeway in terms of not having to put their hands in their pockets, we have to start with these two home games by getting at least 4 points.
Just finally, I wanted to touch on it briefly. Lamine Fan, what must he be thinking? He's now left a club that is qualified for Europe to be in what is a relegation battle in the Championship. What is he? What must he be thinking, Jamie?
What the hell have I done? Probably. As you say, I'm not sure what Europe they qualified for, but I think it's at least Europa League. I'm not sure if it's Champions League, but yeah, that obviously is pretty enticing. Definitely a shot window for him. Yeah, be interesting. I mean, if he is as good as we all think he is based on his performances, and then he should be able to grab this team by the neck and try and put us up the table. But yeah, it's always interesting to sort of see what players must be thinking, and again, always the risk of signing for a club too early, right? It's fine if you sign and join them straight away, but to sign and then not join them for 6 months, that's always a bit of a gamble because you've signed for us on the expectation that we're a former Premier League team and trying to get back into the Prem, but it's so turned out that we're now a lower half Championship team. So yeah, he's probably having a few regrets in the minute.
And Adam, you've mentioned that the board need to either back Edwards or sack Edwards, and Fan coming in isn't enough. Just him, because he's already a player that the club have, so they need to invest more.
Yeah. I mean, it's not enough. It's going to be a good addition, I think, based on everything that we've seen. But there are players in the squad that clearly have ability that we've spoken about today that aren't producing the goods. So you have to take stock and think, right, are we going to move a few of these on? Are we going to take some money in January when they're maybe a little bit more valuable than they will be in the summer, whether we're still in this league or not? But they've got to do one or the other, right? So I don't want to jump the gun too much, but if they get rid of him, you have to give the new manager an opportunity and enough time to get players in, and hopefully would be utilised in things that we haven't so far, like the Premier League market. But even if Edwards does stay and they back him, you've got to show more ambition than we did in the summer, and you've got to go early as well. You've got to be going in the first week or two of the window to stock up and do enough to keep us up. So yeah, it really is a case of sack him or back him. I know where I still lean on it, and I'm not hiding behind the fact that I think we need that change, particularly when I see a couple of managers that are available now. One the new name that's come out is Steve Cooper, who's available. Whether we'd be able to get him with the ambition, I don't know, but I would hands down take him. That's a conversation for another time. But yeah, it's a big month, and it's going to be. I mean, it's just going to be massive the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks, really, before that January window closes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one or the other. it's a big 6 weeks. You either, as you say, you back him, which again I'm not against. Like if that's the decision, that's fine. But I need to see it through. You need to put genuinely. You need to put £10 million on the table in January and say, look, we're backing you. Here's some money for a couple of permanents, so we can get a loan or two in. We can get rid of Chong or Mengi if there's bids that come in for them. And I say £10 million on the table. That's net, by the way. So if we do get 10 million for Mengi, and if we can get a couple million for Chong, then that turns it into 15-20 million at least. So yeah, you either back him or you don't, because I think if you don't, then that's saying that you're not backing him because you don't think that he is the right man for the choice or for the job. Which then, if that's the case, then just get rid of him now and just pay the £1.5 million, because £1.5 million probably is the difference between Championship and League One football. So you just spend it now and try and make the change and get a Steve Cooper in and keep us up. Or you back him, and if you don't do either, and you just sort of let us be a plane with a sort of a blown out turbine for 6 weeks, and then the window's shut in February. It's almost like that meme with that school kid on the bus with like saying everything is fine whilst everything's around him is sort of up in flames. If the board does that for 6 weeks, and then we're in February having not backed him, and we still got him, then yeah, I think we really are in a battle to stay up, because I think there is currently this reliance on home games, which I think is a really, really dangerous place to be in. So yeah, back him or sack him. At this point, again, I probably am marginally towards sack, because I think that you can get more out of these players. But if the choice is to back him, then I'm not against that either, and I won't be here in February having spent £15 million and he's still in role. I would then I'd be like, no, Edward, it's on you. But if the board don't do either, then I think there firmly has to be fingers pointed at them in February if they do neither.
Yeah, that is everything from us for today. But we'd love to know your thoughts on Edward, the Edwards question. Are the board going to back him, or are they going to sack him? Let us know in the comments, or tweet us, message us on social media, and we would love to know your thoughts on that, because I'm sure there's plenty of people with something to say about it. But from myself, from Jamie, and from Adam, thank you very much for listening.